Um, this video is about whether you should lose your virginity. Should you lose your virginity? And if you're watching this video, my guess is maybe you're a teenager, maybe you're in your early 20s, you're probably young, maybe, and you're just wondering, should you go ahead and lose your virginity? Maybe you got a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you're just wondering if this is the right time, and how do you make this really big decision? And you're looking at me right now, and I'm not like some young girl who tells you how to put your makeup on, who gives advice about this kind of stuff. You're looking at a married man. I've got kids, and I want to tell you that it's actually a good thing in a lot of cases to ask someone who's a few years older than you about this, who's actually married, because they've gone through some of the stuff that you haven't gone through yet, and they've got life experience. Now, sometimes older people can give you really bad advice. If someone's old, that doesn't necessarily mean their advice is good. But listen to what I have to say, and it'll give you a different perspective on it from what you might pick up from watching the television or from listening to radio or songs or watching movies or something like that. So first of all, we need to think about what sex does. Biologically, what's the purpose of it, or what function it performs biologically. Well, that's where babies come from, and you probably already know that. When you were a kid, somebody told you that. Somebody at school might have told you, or maybe you learned it in some class, or maybe your parents actually sat you down and explained that to you, that that's where the babies come from. But yeah, I mean, that's a really big part of this whole issue about whether you should have sex with with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, because if you have sex, if you have sexual intercourse, that could result in a child. And the thing is, or in pregnancy. And that the thing is that no matter what form of birth control, I heard that condoms are about 92% effective, and there are other forms of birth control. So there's not a 100% chance that you're not going to get pregnant if you do that. So the thing is, you shouldn't have sex with somebody if you're not in a situation where you could have a baby with them. And you could say, well, there's birth control. I already talked about it. That's not 100% effective. And you could also say, well, there's always abortions. But you know what? If you think that an abortion is okay, and that's just no big deal, then you've really been duped. A lot of women who have abortions and girls who have abortions, it's a very traumatic thing. And some of them will wake up with dreams about the baby they could have had. And it's really, our society has really become calloused about it. It's really a big deal, because if a football player has some dogs that he fights, has them fight against each other, and he tortures the dogs and stuff like that, he can go to prison for that. But and I mean, yeah, that's a bad thing to mistreat an animal. I'm not saying that's okay, but isn't it worse to do that to a human being, to kill a human being, even if the human being is living inside a mother's womb? And when they're real little, they're still I don't know what how many weeks it is, but after so many weeks, they can feel pain. And after, even I think it's fewer weeks before then, there's a heartbeat, there's brain waves, and it's legal to kill a baby that can feel pain, that has brain waves. And just because the government makes it legal doesn't mean that it's moral or ethical. And if you're a guy and you sleep with a girl, she could go off and have an abortion. She could kill your child, and you don't have any say so as far as the government is concerned. So that's really a serious deal about losing your virginity. Is you could get pregnant, or you could get somebody else pregnant. And if you think, oh, abortion's okay, but then you go in there and you look and you do an ultrasound and you see that, and you see some baby, and you realize what you're doing, and then you end up having the baby, well, you don't want to have the baby before you're able to take care of the baby. And if you're thinking about, well, it's okay, I'll just have a baby if this happens, you have no idea what you're getting into. It is so much work for two adults, where there's money coming into the family, and you'll be putting your parents, if they help you take care of the grandbaby, you'll be putting your parents under a lot of stress. You have no idea. These little ones, the baby's born, Mommy's super exhausted, and daddy's exhausted from staying up with her too and all that, staying at the hospital. You come home, and every couple of hours, this baby needs to be fed, and then there's diaper changes on top of that. So you just like, you try to go to sleep, and it's like, wah! And then you find out there's like, oh, that's the hungry cry, or that's the diaper change cry, or that's the this slash that cry. You can tell by the cry sometimes, and they're always waking you up, and they're worth it. They're beautiful, they're wonderful, and but it's a lot of work, especially if you're like a teenager. You have no idea what that involves, especially the mommy. I mean, the mommy's got it's just really big. It's a really, really big deal. And how they feed the baby for optimum health for the baby, it's a big deal. I'm telling you. You don't want to get pregnant before you're ready. You want to be married. You want to have income coming in, so like, if you're a woman, you might want to have, your husband needs to have a job so that you can stay home with the baby, even if you got maternity leave or whatever. People say, oh, I get maternity leave, but when that maternity leave runs out, you might think, oh, this career is so important, but once you hold that baby in your arms, wow. But if you haven't gone to college and you're single and you don't have a job and you have a baby, that's a pretty heavy thing. You might think, oh, there's food stamps, there's this stuff from the government. You don't want to live like that because it's not going to be enough to support you, and it's there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to keep the food stamp programs going up and going on and on in the future. At some point, the United States is going to have to pay back its national debt, or something's going to happen. China might sell off our treasury bills at pennies on the dollar and take our currency if it's better overall for their economy and their system. So we're in a vulnerable situation, so you can't depend on that. So anyway, the first thing is you can actually have a baby. The other thing is you can get a disease, and not all the diseases are protected by condoms. I mean, that sure, it might reduce your chances of getting a disease, of getting AIDS, but there's some diseases that it doesn't even affect. There's some diseases that the part that's covered isn't the part where it's transferred. I mean, you can get all kinds of diseases, even if you use a condom. They call it safe sex and all this kind of stuff. But it's not just like, the top 3 or 4 or 5, gonorrhea and AIDS and what is it? What's the word? Herpes. And I don't think that the birth control methods or the methods they have protect against that. So it's not just those. There's lots of them. There's obscure ones you haven't heard of, and then there's one that causes cancer. It's just nasty. So if you sleep with somebody that slept with somebody else, then that other person slept with somebody, and then whoever they slept with. I mean, it's just a chain of thousands and thousands of people. It's like looking up your genealogy or something and trying to count how many people are in it, because if you got 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, it's just pretty nasty. So you don't want to get into that. If you actually marry a virgin and wait to have sex until you get married and you're a virgin, then you don't even have to worry about. I mean, it'd just be the remotest chance of any kind of disease being involved in the whole deal there. So that's just a different scenario. The other thing is if you have sex with somebody else, you're emotionally bonded to that person. It's not in the past. There's conventional wisdom in past centuries in Western culture in a lot of countries. It was common for people to remain virgins until they're married. And I lived over in Asia, and I lived in a culture where that was the norm, and it's good conventional wisdom to do that. Now, there's some research in 1990 by a researcher named Teachman, and I don't remember the exact percentages. It might have been like double the divorce rate. But if a woman, or it was a huge gap. If a woman was a virgin when she got married versus if she'd had multiple sexual partners, her chances of getting a divorce went way up high. And I don't think it's just about her saying, oh, this guy isn't as good as these guys in the past. That could be part of it. But I think part of it is like hormonal bonding, and there's just all these hormones that rush through your body, and you bond with this person when you do that. And if you're not going to marry that person, then you bond with a person. And in the Bible, it talks about 2 becoming one flesh. And then if you violate, if you're going around sleeping with different people, you don't get to experience that with just one person for life. So you're missing out. if you lose your virginity. You're missing out on something. And you're missing out on doing that in a real committed relationship that's a commitment, a covenant for life. You're missing out on something that you can experience in sex that you're supposed to experience. It's a good thing. So that's another reason not to jump ahead and lose your virginity before you get married, is because you're being bonded to this other person. Now, I know, okay, let's say you're 16, 17, you're in high school, and you say, this is my boyfriend or this is my girlfriend. I'm going to spend the rest of my life with this person. We're going to get married anyway, so it doesn't matter. But you know just what percentage of relationships where one of them says that really work out? Now, let's say you're a girl, and it's a stereotype, but this happens a lot this way. I know nowadays it happens in reverse, but let's say the guy is pressuring you to have sex or to move into more and more sexual activity. It might not be intercourse, but he's trying to do sexual activities with you. And he says, oh, I love you. If you love me, you'll do it. Well, if he loves you, why is he putting this pressure on you? He hasn't married you. You should have a little higher standard and some self-respect about what kind of level of love you're willing to accept before you're going to have sex with someone. And if you really want to have a high level of respect for yourself and a high level of love, then you need somebody who loves you enough to wait until he's able to financially be a provider for you and the family and for kids that are coming along. Because don't forget, sex results in children, and you don't want to be faced with a situation where maybe your parents are telling you to kill your baby, or this boyfriend is telling you to kill your baby, and you love him so much and you want to marry him, and he's telling you to kill your baby so that that you can cover up their mistake or not have to raise the baby, and put it, so it won't ruin your life, they say. But then you kill somebody else so it doesn't ruin your life. Then you have to bear the guilt of that for the rest of your life. And right now you might think, oh, this guy's crazy. That's not killing. But hey, what if your opinion changes 10 years down the road and then you've done it? You've gone to a doctor and had that done. Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's moral. Our society's morality is decaying. It's gotten bad in a lot of ways. So you can't just go by what everybody says or what you see on TV or what people tell you or something you read in a book. You really need to think about these things, really think them through, and don't put yourself in a situation where if you think it through a little bit differently later, you're going to feel really guilty because you've done something really bad. Because a lot of women who go through the abortion, they don't realize it until after it's over how traumatic the whole experience is. They fool themselves, they lie to themselves, they tell themselves it's going to be okay, but then it's not. There was a video on the internet the other day where a woman went in with a video camera and asked a Planned Parenthood, I believe it was, worker, or an abortion, I don't know, whatever abortion clinic it was, worker, and asked, if the baby comes out and the baby's alive, do you help the baby out? And they're going to let the baby die. The baby comes out, if there's a mistake and they don't kill the baby in the womb and the baby comes out, they're just going to let the baby die. It's just awful. It's really bad. You don't want to be in that situation. You got to be in a situation where if there is a child, even if you don't plan on having kids, but if there is one, you can take care of the child. And that's, marriage with people who are not trying to finish their education in high school or something like that, So you want to have somebody, if someone's pressuring you to have sex and they say you'll do it if you love me, if they love you, they won't pressure you. And if they really love you enough to want to have sex with you, they'll marry you first and be committed to you for life and be willing enough to do it, to talk to your daddy if you're a young woman, or even so, even the other way around, you meet the parents and everything, and get their blessing to marry you, and and you do that, and then you have relationships with the family as opposed to just running off somewhere to Vegas or something like that, against their will. But you love each other enough to commit in front of a large group of people, with God as a witness and everybody else as a witness there, that they actually love you enough to marry you. So have some self-respect, have some decency for yourself, and it's just also good morality. Now, another reason to wait until you're married to have sex are religious reasons. There's a God, and one day you're going to stand before God on the day of judgment. And fornication, having sex outside of marriage, is a sin. It's sinful to have sex outside of marriage. And you don't see that on TV. On TV, they're telling you, you just see two people meet and then they flirt a little bit, and then they're back in an apartment having sex. On and they, if it's on TV, they probably don't show everything, but it's implied, or they show enough to know what's going on, and that's a really terrible way to live your life. You pick up a lot of diseases, get people pregnant, or get pregnant. The guys get people pregnant, don't even know it. Get girls pregnant, don't even know it. And so this is a terrible way to live your life. And then the morality you get in school is that if you have sex, you need to use a condom, and that's like supposed to be that's about the extent of the morality you get, and it doesn't even make sense. And we need to realize that sex is for children, and you want to have it and have the children in this stable relationship. And I'm not an expert on this kind of research, but apparently there's a lot of measures that are used to measure this. And the children that are born in a two-parent home, that are raised in a two-parent home, do better on all kinds of measures like grades and just how they turn out in life. Maybe I think it's crime measurements and things like that, whether they commit crimes. They turn out a lot better than, on average, or they have a better chance of turning out well on these metrics if they're raised in a two-parent home as opposed to a single-parent home. So if you get pregnant and you have the baby or whatever, or if she does, and you're in the baby's life, but you're not living in the home, that puts the baby at a higher risk for a lot of difficulties in life. Now, as far as faith goes, as far as God goes, God doesn't want you to fornicate. He doesn't want you to. The Bible actually says that He avenges those who defraud their brother in this way. And you know what? If you give sex away to somebody, to a boyfriend that you think you're going to marry, or to a girlfriend that you think you're going to marry, and you end up marrying somebody else, you're actually robbing that other person of your virginity. You're giving it away. You're dishonoring your parents, and you're behaving in a bad manner. The Bible says, honor your father and your mother. It's in the Ten Commandments. It also says, do not commit adultery. Jesus said that if a man looks at a woman in order to lust after her, he has committed adultery with her already in his heart. So that's kind of the purpose of porn, isn't it? That's why people look at porn. So anyway, so you need to keep your mind pure. You need to keep your heart pure. And maybe you've sinned. Maybe there are other sins. There's stealing. There's bearing false witness against your neighbor, lying. There's all kinds of sins. And maybe you've sinned and you haven't done what's right. Maybe you did lose your virginity. Maybe you sinned by fornicating, or maybe you've looked at porn, and maybe you've done other sins that aren't related. The way you've talked to your parents. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And that's another thing. One of the good things about God is that He's very gracious, and He sent His Son, who is Jesus, who is the Word of God, who became flesh and was born as a man, born of a virgin. He was born, He lived a perfect, sinless life, and then He was crucified on the cross, as it was prophesied in the Old Testament that He would die, and He took on Himself the sins of all the sinners, and then God raised Him from the dead. And if we believe in Jesus, we put our faith in Jesus, and we believe that God raised Him from the dead, we can be saved. And Jesus told His disciples, He told them to go preach the gospel. He says, he that believes and is baptized shall be saved, and he that does not believe shall be condemned, according to Mark 16. And so, there's opportunities for you. I just know that if I'm talking about this kind of stuff, some people may feel guilty about things they've done in the past. And even if you've had an abortion or something like that, you can still be forgiven, and you can find peace with God. You can have a clean conscience before God after you've repented of your sins, after you've and after you put your faith in Jesus and believed in Him. So I would encourage you to do that as well, because I know some people may be watching this, and whether it's you've sinned in this area or some other area, you may have some feelings of guilt about that. And God is a just judge who will judge people who have sinned. But the thing is, He sent His Son. He put the penalty for the sin on His Son so that we believe in His Son Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God, we can be forgiven of our sins. So I would just like to encourage you to do that, to put your faith in Him, confess Him as Lord, go out, um, meet with a Christian and study the Bible, learn about the faith, get baptized, follow the Lord, and live a life that's pleasing to Him, fellowship with other believers. So anyway, so that's what I wanted to share with you about whether you should lose your virginity. If you're not married, my answer is no. And I can also just share with you, my wife and I both waited. We're both glad we did that. I don't have to, um, I think psychologically it's a lot easier for both parties if you haven't done that. And I think also it just creates, people who didn't wait until marriage can have stable marriages and things like that. But I think it does make it a lot easier. I really enjoy my marriage. I really enjoy just the wife, my wife, the person that she is. I appreciate that, and it's just a really good thing. So there are good marriages out there, and this is just something you can do to decrease your chances of divorce, to help you not have the emotional pain of that comes with the breakups after you've had sex with somebody, or being taken advantage of some guy, for example, or girl who just treats you real nice and you think you're going to be together forever, and then after sex they hate you as much as they loved you, lose respect for you, or eventually break up after they get what they want. So you need to protect yourself, have some self-respect. It's not just, how high my feelings and emotions are towards this person and whether that justifies having sex. No, you want someone, you want to have sex with someone who you love, that loves you, but they love you enough and you love that person enough to commit for life. Now that's the kind of love that you need to have. You need to be married, marital love. So thanks a lot for watching this video. Um, if you think this video is a good video and you know somebody who needs to hear it, you think it would be good for somebody, just share the link with them and let them listen. And yeah, thanks a lot for listening to it, to the video, and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.